Bert! Get him! Yeah! Ron Bain was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey everybody, it is Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. It's Super Bowl Sunday, but we're not going to talk about the Super Bowl because I don't know squat about football. I couldn't tell you who won last year's Super Bowl. I couldn't. The closest I could come to a football statistic is that the Bears were in the playoff, being an original Chicago boy. If I was going to root for somebody, of course I would root for the Bears. But yeah, I do follow the Olympics. In fact, well, you're not going to believe this, and I mean, you don't believe a lot of things I say sometimes, especially in the intro, but I was contacted by the Olympic Council. They were looking for some extra sponsors. And I said, my list of sponsors kind of sponsors everything that I do in the outdoors, but I think there's a place for them in all the different Olympic events. And they said, how so? And I said, well, you get a hold of Onyx because they sponsor everything this show does, everything you do, whether it's hunting, fishing, backpacking, off-roading. They're the whole enchilada. So if you look in the Olympic rings, like on the commercials, on the fifth ring to the right at the bottom, you're going to see the little red X. It's really hard to see, but yeah, Onyx is sponsoring the whole. Well, just like they're doing at Pheasant Fest. You know, like you go there, you're going to see Onyx. You go to the Olympics, you're going to see it. That's how it works. Now, then I had to go down, sponsor by sponsor. And so what we did is we came up with Gunner is going to sponsor the ski jumping. Now, that's the one everybody likes watching because those guys just go flying down that hill and then they hit that ramp and then they're just up. Well, literally, come on, think about it. If you were going to be forced into a Winter Olympic sport and it's okay, it's time to do the ski jump, you're going to go like, no, because it's the scariest event. Just like putting your dog in a shitty transportation kennel is the scariest thing you could do. You don't want to do that. You put your dog in a Gunner kennel. All right? Garmin is going to sponsor this year the ski mountaineering, which I actually had to look that up. It's an endurance sport. It combines uphill climbing, downhill skiing, rugged backcountry terrain. Now, the reason they're sponsoring that is when they were laying out these courses, some of these people fall right off the cliff, right? They got to come in and get them with a helicopter. So they put Garmin TT25s around their ankle. That way, just like when we lose our dog for a minute, or let's just call it peace of mind, when the ski mountaineering team's out there, they got Garmin around their ankle. K9 Athlete is going to do the speed. They're going to sponsor speed skating. Now, that's one of the few sports that, I would try that. If they said, okay, you got to do all the sports, I would try it. But I don't have the thighs for it. I don't have the endurance for it. But our dogs have the endurance. Imagine the dogs on skates. They would whip around that. They would make them over-thighed athletes look like wimps if you could put skates on all four of your dogs and give them some K9 Athlete for some endurance. Mossberg they jumped right in for biathlon. Well, obviously, it's the only winter sport that involves a firearm. And it turns out the biathlon and Mossberg were founded in the same year. Please do not fact check me on any of this stuff. Boss, absolutely. I asked Brandon. I said, boss. I said, Brandon, what sport in the Winter Olympics would you want to sponsor? And right away he said freestyle. And I said, freestyle skiing? He says, yeah. First of all, you got to be a little crazy. You got to be a free thinker. You got to wing it. Conditions change, markets change, products change. Just like when they came out with Legacy, they knocked it out of the park. Now they got the copper. They've always adjusted. That made sense. Boss is going to sponsor freestyle skiing. Purina is going to sponsor cross-country skiing. Now you're thinking, well, that's not that exciting. I've cross-country skied before. It's the oldest sport known that's at the Olympics. People have been cross-country skiing since they could carve out a piece of wood over in Finland, okay? And Purina's been making dog food since they made the first cross-country skis. It only makes sense. I called up Brent Pike from Pike Gear. I said, what sport do you want to sponsor? And he says, actually, I'm going to be watching the Super Bowl. I said, da. We need you to sponsor one of the events at the Olympics. And he went right for hockey. And I'm thinking, were you a hockey player? He goes, no, I was a football player. But it's America, okay? And America wins, and Pike wins. That's it. That's how it goes. And then I finally got a hold of Jack Butler from Arxis USA. I said, Jack, I need all my sponsors to sponsor an Olympic event, and you'll get a little credit at the end. Like when the Olympics are all over, if you watch the final after it goes by gaffer, best boy, overhead boom mic operator, at the bottom of this, you're going to see all these sponsors on there. And Arxis is going to sponsor the curling. Now, don't be. I know some of you are like going curling. That's the thing where they just like, But what do you think they got on their feet? See, you didn't know that. The curling team, all the curling teams are wearing Arxis boots because they are waterproof. They are insulated. They have models for, they got winter curling boots. They got spring curling boots. They got fall curling boots. So there. Thank you to all the sponsors of this show for doing what you could to make the Milan Cortino Games a success. I was going to ask my patrons if they would do that, and it's like, look, we already sponsor your show. We're tapped out, Ron. But if you'd want to become a patron of this show, that would be great. I would really appreciate it. We have a lot more content coming out. We have the private Facebook group where I'm putting up a bunch of pictures from 30, 40 years ago and videos from a bear hunt. And we have our Zoom room coming up next Thursday, which I hope we get more people at because, there's a lot of stuff. I always have every month there's something to talk about. And this month is probably going to be about me whining about my total knee replacement surgery. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this episode. I enjoyed this conversation, and I can't wait to get to Pheasant Fest and meet this lady in person. All right, everybody, I am on a Zoom call with Kate Ahnstrom, and Kate reached out to me a couple weeks ago. Turns out she's going to be right behind my booth at Pheasant Fest, and she said, I'd like to get to know you and maybe do an episode. And I said, well, what are you all about? So when I got her first email, I was a little nervous because her signature says, Paragon School of Sporting Association instructor, Siren USA promotions manager, hunting president, VA, Piedmont chapter, Quail Forever, Woods and Waters contributing editor, her Upland regional coordinator, Artemis Virginia State ambassador, Women's Outdoor News contributing editor, Blue Kai Kennels co-owner. So, Kate, that's a lot. Okay, that's a little intimidating if you want to, depending on what job you're going for. But I thought of two more things to put in your signature title of your email.
Okay, great.
Probably was class valedictorian and voted most likely to overcommit her time.
So definitely not valedictorian. However, my husband will completely agree with definitely overcommitting on time.
Yeah, you are obviously a busy person. In spite of the storm you're dealing with right now down in the Carolina or down in Virginia.
Well, even with the storm, Ron, it's kind of been a little bit of a blessing because I've been able to get a lot of stuff accomplished. Right now, we've got the General Assembly in session, and there's a ton of bills coming through that I've been fighting to make sure that we have our 2A rights and kept in order here. And we also have our Quail Forever banquet for the Central Virginia chapter coming up next week. And I've kind of course, overcommitted on opportunities with putting the banquet together. So there's plenty of stuff to keep me busy, even though we're kind of inside.
Yeah, I mean, most people listen to the show know or have heard that I have a place in Virginia as well, which is probably only an hour from you because I'm only like 40 minutes from Charlottesville. So we're not really, we're kind of basically neighbors in a sense, but they got hit by one heck of a storm. My friend down there that mows the grass and checks on my house when it's not being rented, he said nobody could get up the driveway. The trees are down. The ice is, sounds like this was a good year not to have my winter in Virginia, huh?
Yeah, it's, I can't remember the last time. I think talking with some friends, I think it was way back in 96 when we had a bunch of snow and then a whole bunch of ice and freezing rain on top of it. Now, where we're at, we actually did not get the freezing rain, but we did get, I think, about 2 inches of sleet. I mean,
Oh,
that's
what?
all it did was sleet. So, I had a hunt yesterday down at one of my buddy's preserves down at Bacon Farms, and we had a big construction company that comes out each year and they do a morning hunt and they have the lunch at the hunting lodge and then they do an afternoon hunt. And I was like, are they really coming out? Like, you really want me to show up? Like, did you see what temperature is going to be at 9 a.m. when we start?
Yeah.
And Jacob was like, yeah, dude, they want to do it. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. So packed up the pups and headed down there. And I mean, it actually wasn't that bad as far as temperature wise, but I just can't remember where there has been snow and ice hanging around
Yeah.
for this long after,
Yeah, it
it
typically
fell.
melts off a little bit, and
Oh,
it's
like two
not a,
days.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a bad winter. The winters I spent in Virginia made me feel like I was in Florida compared to Michigan, you know.
Yeah, I mean, typically this time of year, it's,
Yeah.
40, 45
Mhm.
degrees. That's why when people ask, from my shooting school, like, oh, well, do you teach year round? I'm like, oh, absolutely. It's Virginia. I
Yeah.
might have a couple days I can't teach. But
Right.
this
Right.
year, I mean, I've had, well, right now I've been closed for 2 weeks.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to teach in 28 degrees and,
No.
my students sure as hell don't want to try to learn anything in 28
No.
degrees.
I left that temperature a long time ago. Even when I used to go to South Dakota, I'm like, guys, we could just go have breakfast and then lunch.
Yeah,
You know? And
that could
then
be the day.
and then we can road hunt at 4:30 and see if we see a bird on the road. I'm not I lost that girl a long time ago, but
Yeah.
where do we start? I mean, uh, you've got I don't want to say breeding operation. You started a kennel with your German short hairs.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, everything, Ron, it
was
all,
that snowballed from something else? Where
it
where did it
did.
come from? Yeah.
Yeah, so I always joke when students or friends of mine say, Kate, how in the world did you end up being a wing shooting instructor, a sporting clays instructor? I said, oh, it's just a very natural progression from being a flight attendant. And they kind of look at me like, what?
Yeah.
And it's just my cheeky way of making fun of how I kind of came to this. It honestly was just a very bizarre kind of sequence of events. I knew this person who knew that person who said, "Hey, why don't you come try this?" And
Yeah.
one day I went to a sporting clays course and I was like, "Wow, this is a thing." Like,
Yeah.
how come nobody told me this was an actual thing? Like, you get to shoot a shotgun and crush this little clay target.
And it's not all
And
the same target. It's not all like trap or skeet.
no, no, that was over 15 years ago, and it just completely spun out of hand. I mean, I just fell in love with it. I came from a background, I was a flight attendant for over 10 years for Continental, and then my mom had breast cancer, and she used to always like to say, "I can't have my Katie and keto while I'm having chemo." Which was her cheeky way of always like, I'd rather have you home.
Right.
Um, you know, yes, you've got two brothers, but they're boys.
Yeah.
And
They're brothers.
so
Yeah. Trust me, I
she
had two sisters. I know what she's talking about.
yeah. Yeah, so I found a way to stay on the ground, marketing, sales, I worked for a limousine company for a while. So this actually just kind of it's just really cool how everything gelled together. I was able to kind of just melt together my sales and marketing background, learning the game of sporting clays and wing shooting. And before you know it, my husband puts the blessing on, yeah, sure, you want to start your own business, go for it. And so Virginia Shooting Sports was born.
Right.
And I'm actually in the middle right now, hopefully in the next week or two, of a big rebranding because Virginia no longer is, it's yeah, Virginia will always be home, but I teach in South Dakota. I'm in Minnesota a
Yeah.
ton, California, Alabama. I mean, I'm all over the place.
So
So
you will
Virginia,
put clinics on around the country then.
yeah, yeah. So between the fact that I'm constantly traveling across the country and Google really hates the word shooting.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's a
well,
big reason I wanted to change the name as well. So Blue Kai Clay and Wing is in the process of being
hmm,
unveiled to the public. It's just going to take another week or two before my web guy finishes out the rebranding on the website and all that fun stuff. But that's kind of just the in a nutshell how I got into this. The bird dogs, as I kept telling my husband, because I was teaching for probably about 3 or 4 years and constantly begging him, like, Mike, please, we have to get a bird dog. Like, I have to be seen with the bird dog. He's like, no, you
right.
don't. We have plenty of buddies that own bird dogs. You need a bird dog, borrow one. And I
Oh,
was like, no, 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 we got to have our own. So we ended up getting a pup from one of my buddies who had this bloodline. It's a Friedelsheim's and a Sundance bloodline.
I know that.
And
I know the Friedelsheim line very well. Yeah.
yeah, and just absolutely love this particular bitch. Um, got this puppy. Full disclosure, we were basically that brand new 16-year-old licensed driver getting stuck into the seat of a Lamborghini. Like
Yeah.
we had no business with this dog. This was way more dog than we ever had any business with. But we didn't realize it. We
Oh,
found instruction from this person and that person and reading this book and that book and YouTube is a rabbit hole nobody should ever be willing to jump down.
no.
Um,
No.
so Lacey Blues, unfortunately, she's 5 now and she holds every single training mistake we could ever possibly make.
Which is not uncommon for a first dog, but you'd like it to not say every training mistake.
Oh,
Like,
literally every
right,
training
right.
mistake. And the problem is because she is such an amazingly high prey drive dog, there's no off switch. I mean, fun side story. I'll brace the dogs out in nice weather. I'll usually get on the four-wheeler and take them for a couple of miles, and I'll do two, three dogs at a time. Everybody's on e-collars so I can keep track of them. We go down towards the creek. It was probably about 80 degrees. I mean, as it is at 8 o'clock in the morning in Virginia in June.
Yeah, yeah.
So take them down to the creek, let them play in the creek for a little bit. All of a sudden, Lacey Blue starts off to the left and I can hear her sound off when she's on a deer. She has a very distinct bark. She's almost baying like a deer hound.
Yeah, well, houndsmen know their dogs' voices just like that. Yeah.
Yes. So this is that oh no moment. I just spin it to win it on the e-collar, hammer down. She's not vocalizing on the E. I mean, I'm up as high as Garmin lets me go. She's not turning. She's not doing anything. She's gone. So I start uh, getting back to the house, get the dogs back up in the kennels, and start riding around trying to find this idiot dog. After about an hour, I have to make the phone call.
Yeah.
Hey, sweetheart, I've lost your heart dog. I have no clue where she's at because I'm using the regular 550, not the Pro Plus.
Uh-huh.
So I don't have GPS. She's
Yeah.
not responding, and she's about a mile behind the house somewhere.
So, which at this point
That
could be a few more miles.
Yeah, that phone call went about as well as expected.
Hmm.
So 18 hours later, $500 for a drone, and finally a phone call from a person about 5 miles from our house saying, I think we have your dog. Um, I know it's after midnight, but can you come get her? Because she keeps banging on the back door like she wants to come in, but she won't let us catch her. So we just keep tossing her Cheez-Its to get her to stay to get her to stay in the yard. And I'm like, oh my God. Mike and I were up because we couldn't
Yeah.
sleep. The
Yeah.
guy with the drone had just packed up and left. So we're thinking, what in the heck do we do next? So race off, pick up the idiot dog, put her in the truck, and from that point on, everybody has air tags on their collars. So
Yeah. Oh, that if I'd have known that story, we would have done the podcast yesterday. Just, just 'cause I'd have to pull out my dossier of runaway dog stories to match that. I don't know if I can match that one.
well, and she just gets on something and there's no amount of electricity that's going to stop her.
Yeah,
I
yeah, and
mean,
it's just not enough to stop them. But Yeah, unfortunately, I will tell you that in the NAVHDA world where I judged for many years, I've seen dogs like that with first time handlers, and I remember just feeling like you poor son of a gun, because in fact, I remember this. In fact, this was not it was not a Friedel. I know a friend of mine has a bunch of Friedelsheim dogs, but another well-known name in the high energy, high desire short hair world. And this, I'm going to say this mom, she came to the test because her son had football practice that he couldn't miss, but he signed the dog up for the NA test. And mom, let's say like your age, she shows up. She doesn't know one end of the leash from the other.
Oh
And
God.
and that's basically what we did, other than get a drone. For, so after her first segment, I told her, I said, I don't want you to take, there's no offense intended here. I know you're embarrassed. I know you're like shriveling up, like, I'm so sorry. We're not mad at you. We're not mad at the dog, but we are going to move you to number 10 dog. So when a segment's over, you've got another hour to go find the dog.
Oh
So we
gosh.
don't slow the test down any more than we did. So I feel I've seen your pain, but that's with the drone. That tops it. We didn't get a drone out.
Yeah, and this happened when drone recovery was just starting to get kind of big. Like people were just starting to get into thermal imaging.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, Lacey is she is a very unique dog.
she's a lot.
She
She's a lot.
produces amazing puppies. We've got two litters out of her, and I told Mike after this last June 2025 litter, I said that's it, no more. Because my biggest problem has been people understanding when I advertise a high prey drive dog to a hunt home only or a heavy working home.
Yeah,
You going on a hike for a mile or two on a weekend doesn't even come close.
right, right.
And, we are very supportive. Even in our contract that we have for our puppies, we tell people, look, if there's anything that this dog's not working out for any reason, like just
Yeah,
we'll take the dog back.
right.
Like no questions asked, no
Yeah,
harm, no foul.
yeah,
But we understand like this dog cannot be just pushed down to anybody.
yeah,
I do a ton of vetting. I tell people like maybe this particular dog is not good for you if you can hold off and wait for maybe a Kai Storm puppy or, wait for
yeah.
Olivia to have, wait for a different litter.
Right, right.
Um, and I have learned all my buddies that also breed, they're all correct. There's always one puppy in every litter. You will always take, but now I haven't had that happen in the 25 litter, but I've got one that's kind of borderline. Um, and it's kind of wavering and I'm waiting for that puppy to come back,
Let me
you
tell you
know.
something, Kate. It was a lot easier to sell Bronco puppies. The expectations
Yeah.
were way lower. I
Yeah.
I never had anybody go like, "Oh my God, Ron, this is too much dog for me." They would more often call up and say like, "About how old will he be before he actually starts hunting?"
Oh God.
Opposite problem of a German short hair. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's something people don't understand. I had somebody send me a message, I think like 2, 3 days ago, and she said she's been following the kennel and she really loves the line and she wants a Kai puppy. And I said, "Oh yeah, that's great. We'll have some Kai pups coming probably this summer. What do you do? What do you want to do with the puppy?" And I said, "Oh, okay, well, given your kind of wants and desires. Number one listed, by the way, was must have an off switch.
right. Okay.
I'm like, I've got this buddy. He's in North Carolina. He has some amazing Goldens. Like, I think one of his dogs would be great for you.
Right. Right.
No, no, no. I want a short hair. I want a short hair. I'm like, you want a short hair, but you should totally have a golden retriever.
Right, right.
You
Yeah.
know.
No, it's tough. I was never I was not a lifelong breeder, but I dabbled with it for, about 10 years. And it was way, like I said earlier, it's way easier when they came for a Bronco, they were coming for the look. So
Yeah.
they got the look. That's all they were looking for was
Wow.
the big ears and like this super cute puppy. It was like there was never that expectation. Although I did have one. It's a little bit of a digression, but this dog was for a Bronco. It was a lot. It was. In fact, I think there might have been a short hair in the woodpile, so to speak. Okay, because the guy got a hold of me. He wanted his money back. He said, I can't crate train it. We have a dog behaviorist come over. He can't figure it out. And I'm like, boy, this does just not sound like the breed, right? And he met me in Northern Virginia at a shooting preserve I used to go to and frequent. And I got to watch the dog. I'm like, whew, I'll take that dog. That dog's got some zip. And but he said, well, but he's got problems. It won't housebreak. I'm like, okay, we get now. That's a whole nother art form.
Yeah.
And anyway, I gave that dog to a good friend of mine. After I gave the guy his money back, I gave this dog to a friend of mine named Wade Dellinger from Woodstock, Virginia. And Wade had German short hairs. And I think he had some Friedelsheim lines. And he had a perfect property for the dog, a big fenced in area, unfenced in, big pigeon coop. Guy was all in with the NAVHDA stuff and training
Yeah.
and testing. And he got um, the first female prize one Bronco in NAVHDA
Oh, wow.
because she had it all. She had it all. But that's a 1 out of 5 litters, and you get that like 5 out of 4 out of yours,
Oh,
or
it
more.
I mean,
Yeah.
we have had I've got one of my pups from the 2022 litter, who's actually the sister of this one little brown dog that's been running around with me right now. Faith is an explosives detection dog for DNR in New York.
Really?
Yeah, and the
Does
guy that owns the company that bought her that buys these dogs for, you know, whether it's for law enforcement or explosives or drugs or what have you.
Yeah.
He was like, "Do you have any more of her sisters and brothers? I'll buy every one."
Wow.
And I'm like, "No, she's the only one." And I sold her because remember I said there's always one pup that comes back in the litter. Well, her sister, who we had sold to a gentleman out of state, um, he had kept contacting me. This dog is just so vicious. I'm gonna have her put down. I'm like, whoa, 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 what the heck?
Yeah.
It turns out, he sold the dog, broke the contract because you're not allowed to sell any of our dogs
Right.
before we
Contacting
have a
you. Yeah.
chance
Yeah.
to take the dog back. Yeah, so anyway, long story short, I get Belle back, and in order for me to keep her, I'm not about to have three bitches from the same litter.
Hmm.
So someone's got to go. Olivia is the dog that my husband picked, so obviously that dog stays.
Right.
Faith, she's the one that completely just sailed through all of the environmental soundness and all the temperament testing
Yeah.
for law enforcement work, and so she was sold, and we kept Belle. And I probably could have easily just gone right behind and sold Belle as well to do explosives detection or drug work. But I mean, all these dogs, it's constant. I mean, that's why I laugh when people are like, well, they have to have an off switch. I'm like, well, then you don't want high prey drive.
Right.
Because anyone that tells you, and I'm sorry, I completely disagree with anybody that says, oh, my dogs are super high prey drive and they have an off switch in the house. It's BS. You cannot have both without pharmaceutical assistance. I
Did
mean,
you did you next you name the next letter all with pharmaceutical depressants, right?
yeah,
Prozac.
I mean,
This is little Prozac,
this
Prozac,
Zoloft,
so
yeah.
all right. Give me because your path is kind of like almost on lopsided. A lot of people, and I don't mean men or women specifically, a lot of people get the dog because they see one or they go to a preserve or they go to a hunt with a friend. They want
Mhm.
the dog and they don't know how to shoot. They literally don't. I'm not saying they can't handle a gun, but your shooting came before the dog. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not the normal. So on top of that, then you're a shooting instructor, which
I thought I was always a pretty good shot until there was a place in the valley right there in Harrison or in Mount Crawford, Virginia. It was called the Flying Rabbit.
Know it well.
You
Yep.
know, okay. Well, there was a couple guys that owned it. I know the family owns it now, but there was a couple guys. John Alexander, he's a
Yeah.
shooting. You know John?
Yep.
See, I told you we ran into each other somewhere
Oh yeah.
before we started this. So John and his partner was Rick. I can't remember his name, but anyway, they were shooting. They were Virginia shooting instructors in
Hmm.
different levels. What do the levels go to? Like level
And
4?
SCA 3 and
Yeah.
yeah.
And so me and my crew from the plant, we were going there 2, 3 nights a week to go shoot in the summertime. And I always thought I was pretty good until I worked with an instructor and found out that I basically kind of suck.
No.
I just hit more clay targets than the friends I was with, right?
Right. You were just
So did you have a shooting background before going to that first sporting clays thing, or were you kind
um
of a blank slate that just learned it right without learning it wrong? You know what I'm trying to say?
so it's kind of funny because I grew up on a 400-acre farm in Hanover County, Virginia. So BB guns and tin cans on fences and stuff like that was
Yeah.
common. But I didn't really ever hunt. As I got older, I got a concealed carry, so of course went handgun shooting with friends.
Hmm.
But as far as anything hunting, it was my husband that got me into hunting, and that was actually with a bow. Um, and then that progressed into the sporting clays when I discovered sporting clays.
Yeah.
And I learned a bunch from the gentleman I started under,
Yeah.
started mentoring under. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go full on with this. That's when I found the Paragon School and got certified as an instructor in that school. And just, I've had a really great time with some amazing mentors.
Yeah.
One of my buddies was out at Powder Creek in Kansas City. He's no longer with us. But he kind of took me under his wing, and after Lockett passed, he kind of passed me on to another Paragon instructor, a buddy of his, who's up in Poughkeepsie, and Tom helped me a ton. And I've just been able to interact with people that have said, hey, this might work better for you. Try this.
Right.
Um, the biggest thing about the shooting world that I have found is everybody says they have the next greatest thing, whether that's a widget to help you, some little nugget of knowledge, and everybody has something that will help you.
Right.
But nobody has the total one answer.
There's no Harry Potter wand. I know that.
There's not. There's so many components that go into it. And that's kind of where I got into, well, that's exactly why I got into siren shotguns. Um, And actually, the reason that I'm going to be at Pheasant Fest with the Siren brand is because gun fit is very important. And I have been through some shotguns that once I shot the Siren and I looked back or I shot those older guns again, I was like, damn, all right. So those misses weren't totally my fault.
Well, that's nice. That's
Yeah,
but
yeah,
to your point, as a woman, you're probably not going to have the length of arm. And it's always been a thing. I have 3 daughters that I raised. 2 of them still can swing a shotgun pretty decently. I cut the stock off of a Beretta 686 with a table
mhm.
saw. So it's
Oh gosh.
just so Kelsey could shoot when she was 13.
Yeah,
And I know, I remember hearing the name Siren come, or is it Siren or Siren? Is it
Siren.
Siren?
Hmm.
Um, and it was like it took a long time for someone to come up with a gun that was made for a woman. Like I know there's guns that are adaptable, there's length of pulls that'll help, but is is it about the weight or is it about just is it everything
It's
about
everything.
yeah.
Yeah. Siren, we're in that, as I like to explain to people, because it can be a little confusing. So people are saying, well, I don't understand. Is it a Caesar Guarini or is it a Fab arm? I'm like, well, it's both. It just depends on, if you want a siren from the Fab arm side of the house, or if
Yeah.
you want a siren from the Caesar Guarini side of the house.
Right.
The great thing about that is whether you choose the Guarini side or the Fab Arm side, you're getting a fabulous gun.
Right.
But Siren is actually the brand that runs the
Yeah.
middle of both houses.
Gotcha.
And that brand, um, everything we do in that brand is to make sure that it's easier for a woman to be able to shoot a gun, shorter length of
Right.
pull, less weight in the gun, um,
I would imagine a smaller
smaller
grip,
grip.
smaller
Yep.
forearm. Yeah.
Yep. Everything we do. I mean, the gun is weighted and balanced wonderfully for a woman. It's got 7 degrees of pitch instead of 5. So, I'm sure guys have noticed there's certain
Features.
anatomical differences in girls,
Right. Right.
and
Yeah.
we need to accommodate for those. But Siren is actually the only manufacturer, the only brand of shotguns that has a 100% line of shotguns for women, not just a
Yeah.
gun or two. We have an entire line. Whether you're a skeet shooter, a collegiate trap shooter, a
Mhm.
waterfowler, an upland hunter, you love to do it all like I do, doesn't matter. We've got several guns available within each of those applications.
Yeah,
So,
and you couldn't get Remington I mean, you couldn't get many gun companies that invest that much money in the tooling and the
yeah,
dies.
it's not cheap.
Just no, no. I mean, people don't think like, well, why? It's almost like Pike Gear was a sponsor of mine. It's coming back on with the show again, and he would get all kinds of messages from women whose husbands are buying. They're with them hunting, and like, can you make a woman's pair of pants? He goes,
Yeah.
I, not yet, not yet. I don't, like I'm trying to make a pair of hunting pants, and not so. Is there a women's clothing line to go along with Siren, or because that's
Yeah,
like the other thing I hear women talk about is just the gear that they could. I mean, you could get by with clothing should not be your Achilles heel, but there's a degree of comfort that you'd like to have.
well, and it's funny you mentioned that, Ron, because I have whenever I have sponsors, it's somebody that I have gone after. I have picked them because
Yeah.
it's stuff that I use. Um, I have not brought a clothing sponsor to Virginia Shooting Sports because I'll be honest, I find pieces of stuff here and there.
Right.
I do
Right.
have several pieces of Prois gear. However, those girls are in Colorado. They have no clue what a briar is. They
Right.
wouldn't know a briar if it poked them in the field, I swear,
Right.
because their pants are some of the most incredible, useless pants I've ever owned.
I am
They are
going to
so
filter all
comfortable.
emails to Kate
I
Ahnstrom,
know, but they are so
but that
comfortable.
but that's
But as
honest.
soon as I
Right.
walk into Briars, I mean, I am getting torn up.
Right.
So
Right.
as far as an upland pant, I wear them all the time out in South Dakota and Minnesota. Absolutely. Y'all don't have the Briars that we do,
Right.
down
Well,
here in the South.
when I
So
when I first got introduced to some grouse hunting in the valley, we'd hunt into George Washington, just right up the West Virginia
yeah,
line.
yep,
And I didn't know what briars were coming from Michigan. And we got it, we've got some thickets here. But I quickly bought from a fly fishing shop a pair of, I think they were McAllister wax cotton bibs.
yes, yeah.
And heavy, I mean, and
Oh
hot,
yeah,
but I could get through some of that cover because you're right. That stuff grows there well, it's not like Florida, but the growing season, briars could turn into a formidable, formidable
yeah,
barrier. Like it could ruin your day if you
yeah.
and you find yourself all of a sudden, how did I get in the middle of it? You
Well,
know?
and Briars are the whole reason that I was able to convince Mike to let me get an English cocker. I was
Oh,
like, "Are
you
you
didn't,
having fun in the
wait a
briars?"
minute. You didn't tell me you had an English cocker also.
Yeah,
Oh,
Egon.
you hear that, BB? We're in good company. Yeah.
Yep. We joke and tell all of our pointing dog friends because we run in UFTA, a shoot to retrieve trial. So we
Mhm.
always joke and tell our pointing dog friends, yeah, we finally went over to the dark side
Yeah.
and joined the flushing guys.
Um,
But I tell you, I wish that we had gotten a cocker years ago.
yeah.
There is nothing more fun than being able to have that little dog just whistle out, cut loose, get in front of your pointing dogs
Yeah.
and flush the birds up. And you just stand there. There's
Right.
no more you bumbling around in front of the dog, looking back, having conversation. Well, I don't know, Gunner. Are you pointing over here?
Right.
Is mommy close?
Right.
Just cut Egon loose. Let Egon do it. I did it yesterday on the hunt that I was guiding for these guys. I was like, all right, I'm gonna let the gerbil go.
Right.
And they're like, what? I'm like, just stand back. He's got it. And then we had some thick woody brush piles and a bunch of brambles and real thick saplings. And Egon went in there and found about 7 or 8 quail hunkered down
Yeah.
and
Made
popped
him
them
go.
up.
Made him
Yeah,
go. Yeah.
I wasn't getting in there and doing it.
I got to every time I get an episode lately, it turns out my guest has an English cocker and we turned it into an English cocker episode. But
They're great.
I know, but they're getting well,
Well, they
that's
are.
another
They're
one.
getting super
They're
popular.
getting super popular, and I hope and I wish for the best of luck, that people, because I would say almost to date, and this is a probably a total inaccurate statement, when you get one, they're probably pretty much like yours and mine. But, another 10, 15 years of popularity, I'm hoping we
Yeah.
don't have one that um, and I'll tell you, you think that dog doesn't have an off switch, but they literally do have an off switch.
Yeah.
But it's just like when it's time to go, it's wound up like a 3-day clock with an 8-day spring. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and that's something that I have noticed people, because of course you get a dog and then you start joining all the different
hmm
pages and forums and groups, and there's something that I have noticed, a lot of people chatting about EIC with their cockers, the exhaustive disease, or
yeah,
it's
I've
apparently
heard that acronym. Yeah.
it's apparently a bit of a genetic disorder, but they can test for it
Yeah.
through a blood test or a mouth swab. Because I've seen Egon. I mean, he does not want to stop. I can hear he starts breathing a little deeper, a little heavier when he's been running and running and running, and I have to, kind of get
Right.
him just to take a 5-minute break. But they will run themselves into the ground.
Yeah.
Um,
They are so driven to get something in the air. It's
yeah.
it almost makes the pointing dog look lazy.
Yes.
Anyway, I want to go back into to the a little bit of the clothing, the guns. So
Yeah.
you give tell or at least tell listeners, you mentioned that you travel to do wing shooting. Is this
Yeah.
through? I know in your litany signature, um, where was it?
That
Artemis.
paragraph there.
Yeah, the paragraph. Um, do you do this basically for women's groups or just hunting? Like, what's your customer base and how do people set that kind of stuff up with you?
So, since I am the promotions manager with the hunting division for Siren,
Right.
my whole existence within the brand is to basically get people to see the guns,
Mhm.
understand that, because Caesar Guarini Siren side, Fab Arm for we'll say the competitive clay games is extremely well known. Everybody knows,
Yeah.
if you're a woman and you're getting into collegiate trap or skeet or sporting clays, whatever, then go get a Siren.
Right.
However, when it comes to the hunting division, we're kind of an afterthought, like, oh, I didn't know you guys had hunting guns.
Right.
So
Right. They think
that's
of it as only a high-end competition gun.
right.
Yeah.
So my whole job basically in the brand is to get that gun into the hands of anyone that wants to go and hunt. So I'll set up with various clubs. Usually we kind of tend to partner with clubs that already, or preserves, I should say, that already carry our brand. I'm headed out, let's see, in March. Um, Oh, no, I'm sorry. In the end of April, beginning of May, I'm headed to Wing and Barrel out in California. Um, they are a dealer for us, and it also happens to coincide with their Women on the Wing chapter
Gotcha.
annual brunch, I think it is. So we'll do kind of a demo day, some clinics, and since I'm traveling and I'm going to be there, I
Right.
always like to offer the club or the host, while I'm here.
Right.
Do you want me to run some clinics private instruction,
Mhm.
train the trainer with your instructors. What can I help bring to your facility to make sure that when I leave, you have people that feel comfortable coming here, that want to keep coming back here to shoot or hunt or whatever, and preferably do that with a siren.
Right, right.
So
Which is the
one of
goal
my,
for that. But the
yeah,
bigger goal is to get that person, like, the progression, just like you started, you know, say, hey, can we get a dog? Hey, I might need this. They're going to end up going there eventually because
yeah,
everybody starts out with with, let's just say, the Remington, and eventually they get enough magazines in the mail every quarter and they're like, I need a better gun. So you're like,
yeah,
you're planting the seed, but the more important seed is that person is going to like shooting, in the beginning. And
exactly.
and maybe they don't have to ask their husband permission. Maybe.
Well, oh my
But
gosh.
you probably don't tell them that. You
All
don't
those
tell them
emails can go to Ron.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's my whole goal is I want people to be in this sport.
Mhm.
I got into it and I went so crazy deep and so fast into it because I just absolutely love it. You know,
Right.
I look at people all the time. My husband is a sergeant with police department here in the area, and I look at him all the time and I'm like, you poor sap. You have to actually go to work.
Right. And,
Like
and
I
de-
don't even know what that
and deal
is.
with a public that may not want to deal with you.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, totally. So,
Yeah.
I love him dearly, but I cannot wait for him to retire so he can do something that he loves
Right.
and be able to enjoy life as much as I do and pursuing, feathers and teaching and being able to interact with people that want that want my help, that
Right.
want to go further into this industry and this sport.
Yeah.
Um, one of my favorite places in the world, I always call it my home away from home, is Minnesota Horse and Hunt Club. They kind of kicked off the whole, we'll say, travel tour for me. I actually hooked up with Laura Shira and we started the Feathers and Tweed event, and it's always the first Saturday in June for women at the Horse and Hunt. Any woman that wants to find out anything to do about upland hunting.
Or bring your child to that kind of a thing, or is it just more for
Um,
adults
it's more
in that case?
it's more for we've never really put an age minimum on it, but
Hmm.
it's I would say probably like 12, 13, 14, because
Hmm.
we want everyone there, every woman or youth, female youth that's there to be able to interact with all the components.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I would say, probably not so much on the littles.
Right. Right. But
Um,
teen, preteen. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And while I'm there, I always host clinics for, beginning sporting clays, beginning wing shooting,
Yeah.
intermediate advanced. And we'll often host co-ed clinics as well. Honestly, as I go there a couple times a year in October, it's always more wing shooting heavy and I do the sporting clays stuff in the spring and the summer when I'm out
Right.
there. But October, people want to make sure they can go and hit roosters.
Hmm. Hmm.
And my beginning wing shooting clinic, I was a little thrown back because when I showed up for it and the people started arriving for the clinic, I'm like, well, these are everybody's husbands. And I'm looking around going, where's everybody's wife at? No wives, just the hubbies. Just the hobby. I don't know if maybe the wives were like, look, I'm tired of you going out and you're not bringing anything home. You
Go
need to go
shoot.
to this clinic.
Learn to shoot.
Or they just recognized that they spent all this time scouting and searching and money in their bird dogs and
Right.
they want to be a better shot for their bird dog. But it was kind of cool because it was one of the first all male clinics that I have had an opportunity to teach, where typically it's, like 60-40 women or 70-30
Yeah.
women.
Yeah. It's kind of an
Um,
oxymoron because guys don't like to
yeah.
be taught much.
No, no.
In general, we don't need a
Yeah.
map, and I already know how to
Nope.
do it. I already know how to do this.
Yep.
I know when you mentioned our mutual, obviously now mutual acquaintance, John Alexander, he always said, "Give me anybody who hasn't practiced with their friends in the backyard first. Let me start them off with a shotgun,
Yeah.
because and maybe that's why I should say why, but maybe that's a factor when you get these new people, like they haven't had years of screwing up. Maybe those guys did, but that's because guys don't listen. But with you know, I've heard many people say this. There was another shooting. I don't know if you ever remember a guy named Andy Tubb in the Shenandoah Valley. He had an
Mm-mm.
English shooting school called the Glorious 12th for about 5 or 6 years, and he he could, it doesn't mean you could retain it and go right to the sporting clays range, but you can go on his range, and especially if you were not like uh let's say a half-assed, on your third gun and
Mhm.
shoot somewhat regular, he could take a new person, a guy or girl, and I brought a lot of people to his place. And I've never understood how you instructors do it. You just kind of get behind our shoulder, and you look, you're like,
Oh
yeah,
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 shooting off your
put a little
shoulder.
put a little more lead on that. Put a little more, you were under it. Like, how do you're standing behind me? How do you know where I'm at?
Yeah.
And he could get you hitting targets that made you want to go hunting. Like he
Yeah.
could get it's I've always been amazed by that. And when I try to help somebody that I take casually with, or even my daughters, my only advice to them is either double your lead or pull
Oh
the trigger
gosh.
or pull the trigger quicker, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, in some sporting clays events, you aren't pulling the trigger quicker, but in some cases, you do have to learn you you got to get rid of that thinking process, right? And you've just got to commit and pull the trigger kind of quick if you're doing everything else right.
Well, I kind of spend most of my time with students telling them to slow down
Okay.
and trying to instill. I've got actually a five-part process that I use. When people come to me and they want to, there's a difference. There's a sporting clays lesson or a clay games lesson. And then there's a wing shooting lesson. Wing shooting lesson is very different from the clay games lesson because you don't need to worry about where your break point is and
Right.
setting hold points and things like that. You need to work on gun mount consistency
Yeah.
and parlances of the field, things like that. So very, very different, understanding what species you're going after and where they live and how to find them and
Yeah.
how to best swing on that particular bird. However, when it comes to someone that's interested in doing any kind of clay game, they need to understand where their break point is going to be set. They need to actually watch the clay. And I tell
Yeah.
them, I don't understand how I got into a career path that is so mired down in physics and geometry when I literally cheated through algebra. Thank you, Brad Reese, for your narrow shoulders. However, I just I've gotten to the point where I understand as much as I hate math, I have to understand that all your movement does need to be linear. It needs to be slower because let's face it, the ballistics in our firearms now are just insane.
Right. Right.
We've got some shells out there that are shooting, upwards of 1,500, sixteen
Yeah.
hundred feet per second. Um, so it's not that we can't connect with our birds because of lack of ballistics. It's because we don't understand
The math.
the
The math.
math.
The math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once you figure out your break point on a clay, then all you have to basically do is understand speed, angle, and impact. Is it
Yep.
going up or coming down? Is it slow or fast? And
Right.
that's gonna tell you everything you need. And if I could literally flip the switch at the back of your brain and cut your mind off,
Right.
you already know how to shoot any clay I throw for you. You have to get out of your own way. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. And so giving that person the ability to say, okay, so I see this clay in front of me. I want to break it over here. It's slow, it's falling. I don't really need to give it any lead. I can just shoot it on the nose. So my hold point's going to be right over here. Well, now you have a consistency map. You
Hmm.
have a way to be able to go to that same hold point and most of the time the clay thrower is going to throw exactly the same clay over
Most,
and over
yeah,
and
yeah.
over. Of course, accounting for winds and
Hmm.
30-year-old traps and broken clays and things like that. But you could pretty much 9 times out of 10 hit that clay consistently, no
Yeah,
problem,
yeah.
if you understand what the clay is doing. And
And get
that's,
out of your head.
yeah, and that's really the biggest thing. And I tell people, because I get this, no offense to my older guys out there that have been wing shooting for 30, 40, 50 years, but I hear it all the time. Oh, I don't need to really learn how to shoot clays. I'm just here to learn how to shoot birds. And I said, well, you've been shooting birds for 40 years, so something's gone really wrong for you to make the appointment. Like,
Right.
you're here because not because you just want to give me
The stipend.
a handful of cash to help you hit more birds. Like, in 40 years, what's gone wrong? Have
Yeah.
your eyes gone down? Have you switched into a new gun that maybe doesn't fit you? Or are you just at a point where you're realizing maybe I wasn't hitting as many birds as I thought?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Shooting is, I'm addicted to. I don't do enough of it. But I enjoy, I enjoy every time I have a box of clay targets and a thrower, whether
Yeah.
it's at a club and I've always thought I'm a pretty good shot. And then when you go to a good sporting clays course, boy, that's when you find out. That's when you need that math. And that's when I
Yeah.
remember the one that threw me all the time was the teal that just goes up, 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 and then just falls straight down.
Oh, really?
Is that a springing teal, I think they call it?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I spent a box of shells and I couldn't get out of my head for that shot.
Yeah.
Now, I then I would justify it later while we're having a beer, saying like, "Well, there's no bird that flies like that anyway." Well, but there's like to your
I hear
point,
that a lot.
there's no reason that I shouldn't be able to hit the clay target either. You know?
Right. And I
Yeah.
guarantee, Ron, more than likely you were shooting over the top of it,
I
because
yeah.
that bird screws up more people because they assume it's still rising at their break point. It's not,
Right.
it's falling.
It's
So
yeah.
everybody's shooting to the top of the bird. Well, you're never going to be able to hit a falling bird shooting at the top of it.
No, it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
It's like shooting behind a pheasant. It doesn't work well.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
not going to make contact. Yeah. So, my big thing is, no, the clays are not going to truly simulate a bird in flight. However, you're able to build the consistency in your mount and your swing
In your
and
head.
yeah. So two
Yeah.
big things I teach my bird hunters. I really want them to learn how to do the swing through process,
Right.
because we don't know where the bird's going to fly. You will be coming from behind the bird.
Right.
So you need to be comfortable with how that looks, and you do that on the clay course,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
pull
You
away
you
is another
hone you
big
hone
one.
your skills out there. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
build consistency.
Let me ask you quick too. You in your signature, Piedmont chapter of Quail Forever. You
Yes.
said a banquet's coming up. Now I'm gimped up, but maybe I'll try to get down there next year for it and do a little work on my house. Um, how is I do a few times a year we do some work with Rough Grouse Society, and there's a lot of habitat projects that are finding out that good quail habitat is good overwintering and in migrating woodcock habitat. Are
Yes.
are you guys seeing any increase in quail, or is it because when I got to Virginia, I was excited. I thought I might find quail, but I didn't, because I
Well,
wasn't in the
yeah,
right.
especially in
Are,
that area.
yeah.
Yeah.
My neighbor said, he goes, oh, you had to be here about 10, 15 years ago. We could have got you some quail. But
That's helpful.
are, is QF, is there projects going on in the area? Is there habitat projects, or is it just the hanging on to like, no, we love quail forever, and we're not, we can't get. Are we getting some birds back anywhere?
So, I'm really glad that you asked that, Ron, because again, remember, I overcommit my time.
Yeah, I've got
Um,
that down there. Yeah,
yeah.
voted most likely to overcommit.
Yep. So I'm a very active member of the Central Virginia chapter of QF, which is the
Yeah.
one that has a banquet on February 6th.
Okay.
Um, that chapter started actually either right before COVID broke loose or right in the middle of COVID.
Hmm.
So honestly, it's just been this past couple of years that chapter's really gained ground.
Yeah.
We now have a consistent membership that shows up for meetings, projects, events. We had a youth hunt where we took 12 youths out. Um, and taught them how to upland hunt, did the whole conservation portion and habitat and species
Hmm.
ID.
Yeah.
We had a ladies hunt. We had all kinds of great activities throughout the year. In that particular chapter, we have a couple of properties, public lands, WMAs, and not only do we have a bunch of woodcock migrating through
Yeah.
those properties are holding, I'd say probably about 2 to 4 large coveys of quail,
Nice. Nice.
not just 3, 4 birds. I
Right.
mean,
Healthy coveys.
the WMA managers are saying, yeah, I dropped another pin. I bumped a covey. It's probably about 12 to 15 birds. And I'm
Hmm.
like, wow, that's amazing. I am also the president of the Virginia Piedmont chapter. So that Piedmont chapter, that covers where you're at. That's
Okay.
Augusta, Charlottesville,
Yeah.
Albemarle,
Yep.
Louisa, all the way out on the other side of Afton Mountain.
Hmm.
And that chapter we started last year. As with any new volunteer organization, it takes a little bit to get your feet on the ground and up underneath you. We really just started gaining ground, I would say, just this past month or two.
Hmm.
Um, we actually just located a property that we wanted to be engaged with and found that there are 1 or 2 coveys of quail
Wow.
on the property.
Nice.
So we're really excited to be able to go out, start fundraising, because it needs to be burned. It hasn't been burned in 4 years. This
Right.
particular section of the property that needs to be under a prescribed burn. So Quail Forever in Virginia, I would say honestly, 10 years ago was fairly non-existent.
Yeah.
There were a few chapters here and there. QF in Virginia today is definitely strong.
Oh, good.
I
Good
think
to
we have
hear.
6 chapters, 6 active chapters. Of course, some are more active than others, but we definitely have 6 chapters here. There's Coastal, which is out towards the Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area. They're
Right.
very active. So the quail, particularly because we have partnered with Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources, Department of Forestry. If you look up the Flippo Gentry project, it's about 1,500 acres. That is being built into basically a quail showcase. That will
Wow.
be a premier quail hunting grounds here in Virginia.
Wow.
It was an extremely generous donation of land to DWR from private landowners, and it has just absolutely become, um, I mean, everything you would want in quail habitat.
Wow. Is that going to end up doing some research on along lines of like tall timbers, or is it just going to be a habitat
I think
more
it
focused?
is. Yeah, I think it is. That particular property. Um, it's one of those ones where we're always like, oh, when can we start hunting?
Right. Well, of course, there's
You
that.
know,
We always want to know, like, we want to do all the help we can. It's like
so we so we can go on them.
Minnesota finally opened a very limited prairie chicken season. So,
Yeah,
on the western side of
yeah, I saw
Minnesota,
that.
and there wasn't one of us didn't go, when can we go?
Yep.
But I think what's nice, like I did a episode with Marilyn Vetter recently and Ben Jones
Yeah,
from Rough Grouse Society. And we really complained about, or my complaint was the amount of people who wing shoot and the amount of people who are members of the organization that try to help you find those birds. It's a terribly lopsided number,
yeah,
as far as membership goes. But bragging on, let's say, the modern sportsman or today's sportsman, there's way more, at least it might be small, but the advocacy is there for the habitat. It's kind of like I always hear about the National Sheep Foundation. It's a well-funded, fantastic project. Like I'm not a big game hunter anyway. I know I'm not in sheep shape anyway, but the amount of members that they have, knowing that they're never going to draw a tag, right? But
Yeah.
they still have that passion to just, they want to know that they're on the mountain. And
Yep.
I think that's where Quail Forever people, you want to be in a hurry to say, yeah, when's the place going to open up to hunt? But you should relish the fact that there's a place for the birds.
Yeah.
And that's great to hear. I might have to do my official retirement in the state of Virginia if they ever come back good.
I tell you, there are several of our chapter members in the Central Virginia chapter that were out woodcock hunting and also were able to
Get
fire on
quail.
quail.
Yeah, I've got a friend I just did an episode with, and he has a woodcock slash quail camp. Kind of depends on
Yeah.
the woodcock flight, but he's got enough spots where they can take a few quail out of it too. So that's good to hear. Well, all right, let's real quick. You are going to be at Pheasant Fest. Now,
Yes.
what booth is that going to be at, Kate?
It's gonna be Gent's Sporting Arms. We are on the end cap right beside the Women on the Wing Lounge.
Okay.
Forgive me, I think it was booth either 1750 or
Well, they'll find you. I
1850.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Look for Gent's Sporting Arms. We'll be in there with Jason Gentz. He's a dealer for us for Siren Cesar Guarini Fab Arm. Again, right beside the Women on the Wing Lounge, which is super convenient because both Laura Shira and myself will be speaking in the Women on the Wing Lounge. And then also make sure that you are with us at the Path to the Upland stage. Laura and I will be on stage talking about basically our journey as women in the upland industry at 5 o'clock on Friday, and then Saturday, Courtney Bastion, the bird dog babe herself with her upland, she
Yep.
will be joining Laura and I on Saturday at 12:30 on the Path to the Upland stage.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
And we're going to be camped out. Yeah, they usually put me down in the bird dog alley, because of, the hunting dog podcast.
Uh,
And Luke has me up there. I said, yeah, be over by Women on the Wing. He's like,
it's
yeah,
not a
that's where
bad spot.
I said, you know what? I think, Luke, you might be onto something. You might be onto something. So you're going to be hearing our group, and I'm going to be hearing you guys, the whole
Perfect.
3 days. So I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person. And like I said, I think somewhere our paths cross because, oh, there's that little fur missile.
Yeah, this is Olivia.
You ever try to get it?
She gets to be upstairs. I felt so bad with all of the ice that we've had.
Yeah.
Um, the pups, since it was an AM hunt and then an afternoon hunt as well, their feet got torn up
I was going to ask you
on the
that when you
ice.
started talking about that. Yeah,
Yeah, we just don't have that here, and
right,
shame on me.
right.
But we don't
You don't
we
need to
don't
be
hunt where
right,
we need booties.
right. That's like my
Um,
daughter having an ice scraper in Pensacola. I didn't know.
yeah,
She
it's
said,
just
Dad,
not a
I
thing.
didn't know I was going to need it.
Exactly. Exactly. So, but I will have Gunner with me, so you will get to meet my big boy Gunner. If you watch my siren videos, he's the one that's always in the videos with me.
Okay. Well, Kate, I'm looking forward to meeting you and the whole group, and who knows, well, I got a bunch of granddaughters. Maybe there'll be a siren in there for one of them.
Oh, perfect. Yes,
Yeah, you
absolutely.
might have to have a payment plan. We'll work something out. We'll work something out.
Definitely.
This will be let's see, in 20 years, you'll have some good representation from my
Perfect.
side. All right. Tell your husband I think he's a saint, as all husbands are, of overachieving women in the dog world and sheep
Yes.
world. And I'm really glad we got to meet each other before Pheasant Kiss because we'd probably be away from the booth chatting the whole time. And we got this hour and a
Yeah,
half.
someone would come find me and
Hey,
drag
yeah,
me
there's
back to
somebody
work.
wanting to talk to you about guns, Kate, and
I
somebody said,
know.
Ron, there's somebody over here wanted. So I'm glad we got to get this done, and I'm gonna release this. Got one. It'll be in 2 weeks. It'll be not this Sunday, but the next Sunday, because
Okay,
I
perfect. So right before
definitely want to
Pheasant
promote.
Fest.
what you're doing and the fact that you're going to be at Pheasant Fest. And so if people are looking for that, get over there and meet Kate and find out there's a path to sporting clays, hunting, maybe clothing. Kate will give you all her best knowledge on anything
Yeah.
anything for women, guns, and if you know anything about horses, Kate can help you about that too.
Well, and I'll have my hawk with me too, but I think I'm going to leave him at my Airbnb because
Please
he's
do.
kind of a chatty Cathy.
Oh God, hawks too. All right, next
Yep, we
time.
got it all.
Kate, thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely, Ron. Thank you, dear.
Yeah, bye.